why do we have so much guilt and shame associated with our hedonic nature? And to me, because of that original Judeo-Christian split where, you know, pagan communities and, to me, most tribal societies, right, they had these contained spaces to lose their fucking minds, to be hedonic, to have, you know, cornucopias of food or sex or magic or whatever it was that they were having, to partake in sacraments, right? There were structured spaces in which people allowed themselves in super sacred, connected ways to engage with those parts of life. And once it became taught that that was anti-God, anti-religion, anti-good, to me, in the base of so many people's psyches now, because whether you grew up in a Judeo-Christian religion or not, it impacted the culture of the entire world. There's this split where we believe so deep inside of ourselves existentially that when we're having a really fucking good time, we're being the opposite of the divine. And so I see that in the way that people partake in drugs and partying and sex and all of the, you know, and eating, right? There's always this slight shame or guilt because we forgot that originally those are gifts and they can be used as ways to be more intimate, to be more connected, to know more of yourself, right? The best parties can be as potent as a chanting all night, right? The most incredible plant medicine journeys, or, you know, even just taking LSD at Burning Man can be as transformative as a 10-day fast, right? Like, you can party and fuck in such a way that you find more of yourself instead of less of yourself, that it's actually good for you rather than bad for you. But I feel like we forgot that as an art and a practice. And I think, at least what I understood from your book, is part of that you're trying to rebuild in people is them having this relationship to hedonism that is actually thoughtful and that buttresses the expression of hedonism with responsibility, which is very human, right? Like no pagan or no person in a tribe just like took a bunch of drugs, fucked everyone, had like a buffet, and then never went back to work. No, you got up the next day and like did what you had to do with the cow or whatever. And so there's this need to me in the human psyche, both to work and to earn our keep here on this planet in whatever the way that looks like for us, and to show up and be self-responsible for our own lives, and to touch ecstasy and bliss and mischief and play and not have it feel like it's taking us away from God and truth, but actually bringing us closer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one whole element of society that's just missing, that people need, right? We think of parties and raves of just like, you know, people just knocking themselves out and being so bad for you, but you can party in such a way that like you find yourself, and by sunrise you feel amazing no matter what drugs you took. Like, that actually is possible. But it takes a level of self-responsibility and self-knowing. To me, that's different. I think people are maybe confusing the true left-hand path, which to me is about devotion and consciousness, right? It's an incredible discipline. And to me, it's a willingness to be in a devotional love affair with every experience of the universe, which means that if you want to be a true lefty, like, you better be in love with heartbreak and grief and death and like all of the hardest parts of reality, because that to be a true lefty is to be as equally with those as with any other part of reality. And I think maybe what's getting conflated is this deep need in the human psyche to celebrate and fuck and play and be mischievous, and to actually find ourselves again through that. And that without that, there's like a lostness in the human soul. And like, it always pains me when I encounter it. And one of the things I'm super passionate about is using spirituality not to get the fuck out of here, because like, where are you going, right? But to use spirituality to like get more human, be more here, be more in celebration of all that is.
Yeah. I mean, I think even the relatively briefest of inquiries will sort of, you can demonstrate pretty convincingly, like, oh shit, okay, consciousness is the substrate of the universe and we are just starlight dressed up as matter. So you're like, okay, if that was our before state and quite possibly our after state, that's table stakes.
Yeah.
That's actually not the miracle. The miracle is we, the existential mayflies of the universe. right? With opposable thumbs and prefrontal cortexes to love and fuck and fight and care and grieve and be embodied, right? For these 8 decades that we are gifted with this holy shit, we're alive moment. And instead of trying to bypass it, right? And I think that's actually the beauty of any initiatory death rebirth practice, right? Which is the substrate again of most art, philosophy, culture, religion from time immemorial, which is the first time we're born, we didn't have a choice unless you subscribe to a soul contract, blah, blah, blah. But if you're just kind of like on the biological, rational material, it's like, 2 parents bumped uglies and here we are. Right. And we started out in this wonderful womb and everything was groovy. And then we get spat out in this totally traumatizing event into this cold, harsh, bright, loud world. And no one plays fair. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like nobody I was promised a rose garden. I was in the womb. Right. And so most of us have some degree of feeling we got a raw deal, feeling that life isn't the way it was supposed to be, and there's injustice and there's pain and there's suffering and people aren't always nice and I don't get it. So we look to get out. And so we look to bypass it. We soothe with food, we soothe with sex, we soothe with shopping, we soothe with drugs, we soothe with new age spirituality. We're all trying to get the hell out of Dodge. And then no matter how many times you do it, you're like, oh, boom, drop right back here again, and until we finally go, oh, I've now died before I die. I now realize that in fact, I'm not done with this life. And I actually choose with my whole being to say, yes, I am willing to pick back up my yoke. Right. And we know this from stories. We know this from, we know this from Jonah and the whale, right? Peace out. I don't want to do it. Oh shit. Okay. I got to do it. You know it from Jimmy Stewart in A Wonderful Life. I want to jump off a bridge. No, actually, oh my God, this is I had no idea. This is Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. I hate fucking Kansas and this flat ass dusty farm I'm stuck on. Oh my God, there's no place like home, right? We see it 1,000 times in all of our myths and stories, but the hero has to have the choice. And so we're all firstborns running around trying to get the hell out of here. Soothing addictions and seeking sensations. And to become twice-borns is, I think, the first time that we actually have the chance to show up fully in presence and then get to conduct the experiment that you're describing.
And I believe that is part of true Tantra and most real mystical traditions or spiritual traditions, which is you actually stop trying to escape this reality and make a really deep, true peace with the fact that, like, sadness is forever, like your core wound is forever, loneliness is forever, like you stop trying to fight your human condition and be with it. And there's an intimacy to that to me is also like the basis of the most amazing sex and relationships. And it's so hard to make love and to be in the most sacred union of relationships if we can't be with ourselves, right? If we're still telling ourselves the fundamental lie, there's something I could do that will get me out of here. Because as long as you're trying to not be here, you can't fully revel in the most magical gifts that are left everywhere. Like the universe is like one giant fucking Easter egg,
Yeah, there's a book you might have come across. There was a book that Susan Cain wrote a few years ago called Quiet, like being an introvert in an extroverted world. It was like on the Times bestseller list for like 2.5 years. But her new book is called Bittersweet, and it's basically her inquiry of like, why do I love Leonard Cohen songs so much when they wreck me, right? And then in the writing of it, she lost both her father and her brother to COVID, so she actually experienced acute loss.
Wow.
And the whole point of the book, and I love it so much, is, hey, that bittersweetness, that sense of being forever stretched between the agony and the ecstasy is the human condition. That's not an error message. That's not something to fucking take Klonopin for. That's not something to get in touch with your attachment, traumas or your inner dolphin. Like, fuck it. That's us. And it's exquisite. Right there. And she talks even about a Sufi teacher and just, the premise of all of mystical Sufism is the yearning for God.
Yeah.
But we're here, stuck in human form, and it's the yearning. It's even, there's that funny old book, The Tao of Pooh. I don't know if you ever read that back in the day, right? Where like they equate Winnie the Pooh with the tenets of Taoism. And it's the exquisite nature that the moment before the honey is even better than the honey.
Yeah.
Right? It's that yearning. It's that sense that is who we are. We are between Kairos and Chronos. Like Chronos, our chronological lives, is nothing but suffering. That's Buddha's Noble Truth 101. And then Kairos, the deep now. It's timeless, gorgeous. You just want to swim in it. But in these meat suits of ours, right, the best thing we can possibly hope is to be, and that's the mystical interpretation of the cross, right? To be in Christ consciousness, right? Isn't some evangelical Southern Baptist accepting Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. The mystical interpretation of the cross is to actually be a human whose beating aware heart is at that intersection, bearing witness, right, with full agency and choice. And you're like, yeah, that's a fun ass jam. And even like Zorba the Greek, right, like that Nikos Kazantzaki's book, where he's being asked like, so how are you doing this, Zorba, and blah blah blah, and he's like, oh, it's the full catastrophe. Right? The fishing boat, the wife, the kids, life, it's the full fucking catastrophe. And to me, that phrase has been so liberating. I talk with friends and I'm like, how's it going? And they're like, oh man, like the sandwich generation, you're raising young kids, you're dealing with ailing or aging parents. You're like, how do we do this? This isn't what I thought in college or whenever. And you're like, yeah, man, it's the full catastrophe. And just permission for us to sit there and laugh, raise a glass, celebrate it, weep, whatever we need to do, and not feel like there's anything wrong with it, and not feel like there's someplace I'd rather be. And to fully accept it, to me, that is one of those beautiful reframes. And it doesn't change the hurt. It doesn't reduce it one lick, but it does give us a bigger container to hold it in.